Welcome to the deep dive. We're here again taking a whole stack of sources, research, articles, you name it, and boiling it down for you. Today, we're looking into that murky area where mysteries seem completely baffling, maybe even supernatural. But sometimes the truth isn't ghosts or demons, it's something real, often deeply unsettling, discovered only through, well, persistence and science. So our mission today, we're going to unpack two really distinct, fascinating stories, different parts of the world, very different circumstances, but both started shrouded in fear, misunderstanding, communities convinced something inexplicable was happening, until someone looked closer, kept digging, and boom, a shocking discovery reveals the hidden facts. This deep dive is all about stripping away those assumptions, getting to what really happened, even if the truth is pretty chilling. Okay, let's jump right into the first one. We're heading to a small village in Uganda. Picture this: March 7th, 2005, middle of the night. The air is just thick with tension. You've got this 64-year-old man, John Mangan, his face etched with experience, crouched totally silent in the bushes, and he's not alone. Friends, neighbors, they're all there with him. Still, scanning the darkness, listening, you can almost feel their exhaustion, their fear. Now, John, he lived there a long time. 9 kids, 31 grandkids. He remembered when the village was, safe, happy. But that changed 14 years before. Back in 1991, people just started vanishing. Or worse, turning up dead, horribly mutilated. It seemed random, senseless, but relentless. Over those 14 years, 83 people were killed. Think about that. That's like 10% of the whole village. Everyone knew someone who was gone.
A staggering loss.
Yeah.
The impact on a small community like that, unimaginable.
Exactly. And for years, the belief, the accepted story was this was a demon. Some supernatural force they couldn't fight. They tragically, almost chillingly, just accepted it, like a grim fact of life there. Fatalism, really.
Which is understandable when something so terrifying and unexplained persists for so long.
Right, but John Mangan, he just refused to accept it. He'd seen too much. And then a young boy vanished, someone just like his own grandkids. That was the tipping point. He decided, no more. This has to stop.
So he took action.
He did. He rallied the villagers, managed to turn that despair into resolve somehow, convinced them to set up a stakeout. They focused on this one area they called the butchery. Grim name, but that's where most victims were found, or last seen, right near a placid-looking lake.
A lake that held a secret, presumably.
You got it. So the stakeout begins. The tension builds. They wait. 6 nights, watching the dark water, listening. And nothing, absolutely nothing happened. The group starts getting tired, deflated, thinking maybe it is a demon, maybe it's uncatchable, a curse.
Doubts creeping back in. That's natural.
Totally. But John, he wouldn't give up. He pleaded with them, just one more night. Please, one more. And on that 7th night, John thought, okay, let's try something different. Let's try to lure it out.
Active hunting, not just waiting.
Exactly. He and the others, they strung up organ meat, laced it with sharp hooks right in the trees near the lake. The idea was, whatever this thing is, it wants flesh. Then back to the bushes. Silent vigil again. Hours pass. Still nothing. People are getting restless. But then, between 4 and 5 in the morning, pitch black, water still. They hear it.
What was it?
A sound. A low, guttural grumbling. Coming from the lake. Started faint and then got louder. And louder. So loud, John said he could feel his body vibrating with it.
Wow. Intense.
Yeah. And as the sound got louder, ripples on the black water, then this huge, dark silhouette emerges from the lake. It charged the meat, got snagged on the hooks, and started thrashing violently. John, seeing this, knowing something was caught, just sprinted back to the village, screaming. 50 villagers poured out, running to the scene.
So after 14 years, what did they finally catch?
Well, it wasn't a demon, not in the supernatural sense anyway. What they finally ensnared was very real and monstrous in its own right. It turned out to be the largest saltwater crocodile ever found in Uganda, a massive creature 16 feet long, weighing over 2,000 pounds.
16 feet, good grief.
Exactly. This was the demon. A silent, incredibly effective predator that had been picking off villagers one by one, dragging them into the lake for 14 years, unseen by anyone who lived to tell about it.
Unimaginable. So it wasn't supernatural evil, just nature at its most terrifyingly efficient. Precisely. And what's really striking here is John Mangan's persistence, his refusal to accept the inexplicable. He shifted the mindset from fear of a demon to, well, hunting an animal. That ingenuity, setting that trap, it finally revealed the very physical threat. It shows how human determination can sometimes cut through even the deepest fear and fatalism.
Yeah, and the crocodile.
Authorities were called in. Given its size and history, it was captured and relocated. It brought a very real, if chilling, end to the village's long nightmare.
Incredible story. Terrifying, but with a clear, if shocking, answer. Okay, so if you thought that was unsettling, let's shift gears. We're going from the warmth of Uganda to the brutal, freezing cold of the Arctic for a mystery that's maybe even more complex and, frankly, a lot more gruesome.
This one has layers, many layers.
It does. So the year is 1848, April. We're way up north, King William Island, remote, frozen part of Arctic Canada. A group of Inuit hunters are out doing what they do, searching for seals, essential for survival up there. As they near the coast, the youngest hunter goes ahead, climbs an icy ridge to get a better view, but what he sees stops him cold. It's completely inexplicable. Not seals, not polar bears. It's kaluna, their word for white men.
Okay, white men in the Arctic isn't unheard of. Explorers and whalers.
Right, but the state they were in, there were about 40 of them stumbling along the coastline. Their movements were jerky, like puppets, vacant expressions. Their skin looked black and blue, clothes torn to shreds, barely any protection against that cold. And they were dragging this big sled covered with a tarp.
That sounds deeply disturbing. Not just lost, but something fundamentally wrong.
Exactly. The Inuit knew there was a ship, a white man's ship, stuck in the ice offshore, but they hadn't had contact. Seeing them like this on land, it was shocking.
Yeah,
terrifying.
just profoundly unsettling.
And then it got worse. As the hunters watched, hidden, one of the white men suddenly just screamed this awful guttural sound and collapsed onto the ice. The others, they barely reacted, just pulled the sled alongside him, pulled back the tarp, revealing a pile of bodies underneath.
Oh, no.
They threw the man who'd just fallen onto the pile, covered it back up, and just kept going. This creepy, silent procession down the coast. The Inuit hunters were utterly horrified. They fled back to their village, completely shaken.
I can't even imagine witnessing that. The sheer horror and confusion.
Right. But the next day, after talking it over, the villagers reached a conclusion. A compassionate one, though tragically wrong. They figured these white men must just be starving, desperate, lost in the unforgiving Arctic.
A reasonable assumption, given the environment.
So the hunters decided to go back. They took seal meat with them, a peace offering, aiming to help these poor souls. They followed the tracks from the day before, found an abandoned campsite right near the water's edge. There was a campfire, ashes were cold, but there was also a big metal pot with a lid still sitting there and tools left behind.
Wait, they left tools?
Yeah.
And a pot. If they were starving, wouldn't those be essential?
Exactly. That's what puzzled the hunters too. Why leave vital supplies? It didn't add up.
Hmm.
One of the hunters, curious, maybe looking for clues, went over to the pot, he lifted the lid, and whatever he saw inside made him recoil in absolute horror.
Quick, don't leave us hanging. What was in the pot? Well, the answer to that, and the whole horrifying scene, took a very, very long time to piece together.
Well,
130 years.
130 years, wow.
Yeah. So months after that first sighting by the hunters, the Inuit did find more evidence, a mass grave site. Over 30 white men, clearly victims of starvation, exposure, and this eventually led them to the ship itself, the one trapped in the ice. HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, part of the Franklin expedition we now know.
Ah, the Lost Franklin expedition. Okay.
But here's the kicker. The ship, or ships, when finally reached, were found in surprisingly good condition. Cabins with beds made up, a library full of books, games, even fine china, and the most baffling part, a massive food storeroom, packed with canned goods, tins upon tins of food, untouched.
Untouched food, but they starved. That makes no sense at all. Why leave a ship full of food to die on the ice?
Exactly the question that plagued people for over a century. The answer finally came in the 1980s through forensic analysis of the crew members' remains found scattered across the island.
Okay, science to the rescue again. What did they find?
They found the hidden enemy. It wasn't the cold, not directly. It wasn't a lack of supplies. It was lead.
Lead, like lead poisoning.
Precisely. Their state-of-the-art can provisions, meant to keep them alive for years, were sealed with lead solder, poorly sealed in many cases. So with every meal, they were slowly, insidiously poisoning themselves.
Oh my God, what does lead poisoning do on that scale?
It's devastating. Physically, yes, nausea, weakness, sickness. But critically, severe lead poisoning attacks the nervous system. It drives victims into, insanity. We're talking wild mood swings, paranoia, delusions, mental hysteria. They were literally losing their minds.
So that's why they abandoned the ship, the jerky movements, the vacant stares, the irrational behavior. It was lead-induced madness.
That's the scientific consensus now, yes.
Yeah.
In their delirium, surrounded by ample food and relative safety on the ship, they made the catastrophic, irrational decision to leave it all behind. They ventured out into the Arctic wasteland, maybe thinking they could forage, maybe just fleeing imagined terrors. They found only death.
And the sled, the bodies.
That's the grimmest part. As their minds deteriorated further and men started dying from starvation and exposure out on the ice, they resorted to the absolute last taboo, cannibalism. That sled wasn't for burial. The Inuit hunters had stumbled upon their mobile refrigeration unit. They were carrying their dead to eat them.
That is profoundly horrifying, almost beyond comprehension.
It is. And the pot, the thing the hunter recoiled from,
Yes.
it contained a human skull, cracked open, suggesting they were even consuming brains. Bones from the Franklin crew are still being found on King William Island today. A truly ghastly end, driven by unseen poison.
So, two incredibly different stories, worlds apart, but both starting with this terrifying unknown, Uganda. A perceived demon stalking a village, the Arctic.
Mm.
This bizarre, horrifying parade of dying men.
Right, and in both cases, what seemed supernatural or just inexplicably mad turned out to have very real, very physical, scientifically explainable causes.
One revealed by persistent observation and trapping, the other by forensic science over a century later.
It really highlights our tendency, doesn't it, to jump to supernatural explanations for things we don't immediately understand,
Right.
or to misinterpret science based on incomplete information, like the Inuit initially thinking starvation.
No.
The purpose of a deep dive like this, really, is to peel back those layers, to look for the underlying causes, even when they're as unsettling as a giant crocodile or mass lead poisoning leading to madness and cannibalism. It underscores the importance of critical thinking, of not just accepting the frightening unknown.
So we've journeyed through these two quite extraordinary, deeply terrifying, but ultimately revealing stories today. They're stark reminders, I think, that human curiosity, that relentless push to find the real answer, can eventually shed light on even the darkest, most baffling mysteries. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. In our world today, overflowing with information, how do you react to things that seem inexplicable? Are we quick to jump to the easy conclusion, the sensational one? Or do we have the patience, maybe the courage to dig deeper for the truth, even if it's complex or disturbing? Because sometimes the real monsters aren't myths. They're tragic consequences of hidden dangers, a predator in the water or poison in the can. Understanding that difference. Well, that's where real insight and maybe even safety lies.